Welcome to this week's edition of Rugby Unfiltered. I'm your host, Jan de Koning, and with me as always, Eugene Eloff. Loffie, welcome back.
Hi, Jan. Thanks. Great to be back. And I'm very excited because we got one of the top international referees and a friend of mine, Freek Burger, who's totally underutilized in this country with his interpretation and understanding of the laws and taking the laws to the players and the coaches. So, yeah, Freek, it's good to see you. He doesn't look a year older than I saw him last time, but it's lekker to be on the show with you.
Thank you, Loffie. Much appreciated. And as I've said, it's not an easy job. The referee is not an easy job, but let's talk about it.
The one question that bugs me is we always speak about laws and then the clever people talk about interpretation. Freek, that shouldn't be interpretation. You apply the laws. Am I correct?
I'm talking about the word application. You should apply the law. How do you apply the law? Because if you talk about interpretation, you've got a French referee, Italian referee, German referee, South African referee, all with different interpretations. But it's an application. That is the answer. They must find an application of the law. How do you apply the law?
Eugene, what for you grieves you most? Maybe Freek, we can start this way. As a coach, what used to bug you the most? And we're not attacking the referees. Let's make it pretty clear. We're not attacking referees. We're trying to clear this up because there's this whole debate about the possible law changes and stuff. What aggrieved you most, Eugene?
Yeah, and I think as a coach, it's important that you have a good relationship with the referees, not to get any advantage from it, but to understand how they think and how they apply on the field. And therefore, what we used to do, and I don't want to go back to what I used to do, is in the preseason, we would bring in a top ref like Freek, and we would go through all the facets of the game. And he would take us through the motions at the X-house, say, this is how what the law says, this is how the interpretation is, this is how it will be applied. And that makes it easier. And I don't even still like that. Usually before a match or the day before, we could meet with the referees at the hotel or wherever they were staying, both coaches, or the day before. And we would talk about certain things that we also pick up as coaches, how they interpret the breakdown, etc. But just like the referees must adapt, a coach must adapt. If you see the referee spinning you for something, you need to get your message on the field that take away those actions, change it.
Freek, what do you think in the current game, in the modern game? I mean, you come from a time when the referee spoke very little and just applied the laws. What do you think are the biggest problems at the moment?
I think the biggest problem at the moment is the breakdown, the tackle, and also if you take the status of the players they must be on their feet. A player must be on feet. A player on the ground is out of the game. And there's the biggest problem is with the tackle. Who do you penalize? The ball carrier or the tackle player? So that's where we've made several, and I'm telling you, several matches watched and came to the conclusion as referees that the first player you've got to look at in terms of penalty is the tackler. The tackler must release the ball carrier to enable him to place the ball. And there's the problem. They don't allow the ball carrier to place the ball. They play the ball from a sort of a on tackle situation, and that creates a huge problem. So, in my opinion, and it's been discussed worldwide, it's number one, it's the tackler, then the ball carrier, then arriving players. Stick to the basics, and you won't go wrong.
Freek, I want to ask you something, and I agree with what you say about the tackler. But we had a situation at the weekend where a player was tackled and then released, and the player thought he wasn't held and got up and got penalized. What does the law say? I mean, once you go to ground, is there a need for the tackler to hold you?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. That's a difficult one. It was a try scored also in the match at Ellis Park, where the ball carrier was sort of held, and then he broke out of the tackle. Then he wasn't really in a tackle situation, and he actually went on knees, hands and knees, and scored the try. No problem with that. But again, the law is quite clear. You've got to be held, and while being held, ball in hand, touch the ground. So that's a difficult one, and sometimes it's a very quick call. But when you get to the normal tackles, it's quite clear that the player on the ground holding the ball must be given a chance, opportunity to place the ball, to give the tackler a chance to play the ball, but he's got to be on his feet and not covering the ball.
Eugene, you must have some examples of things that, as a coach, you don't always quite understand, or as a spectator, let's speak as a spectator, that you don't quite understand.
Now, I'm not a good spectator. I'll just stick to the coaching. But Jan, what we found difficult was also the interpretation at the scrums. You know, who's walking around, who's dropping it, who's standing up, and I want to ask Freek one question about this weekend. Why will a team that's dominating the scrum walk around? They're getting the ball. They're in the process of getting the ball, and then they get pinned for walking around.
In my opinion, a wrong decision. That's true. It's my opinion. Wrong decision. Team A won the ball. Okay, they won the ball by a skew scrum feed also. So let's put that out of the equation. A scrum feed, yes. So they're all skew. Fine, let's leave it there because we can have an hour on scrum feeds. Then number two, a team wheeling. What is a wheeling? We had the years I refereed. We had brilliant wheeling scrums where the team that hooked the ball, that had the ball, they wheeled the opponents sort of towards the touchline and gave them an ample space to play. Or they wheeled them infield and they played in the 5-meter area. Nick Mallet was brilliant picking up a ball in a wheeling scrum. So I just can't imagine why you could penalize that same team winning the ball. There's a wheel, they wheel. Who wheels the scrum? They wheel scrum for their opponents. So it's a difficult one. But as I've said, the referees are guessing. They're guessing there at the moment. And to me personally, if it's going to be a penalty, it must be for dangerous play. For dangerous play, and you can't allow any play to continue because of the player's neck in a dangerous position. But all these wheeling scrums, sorry, Mr. Referees, you're wrong.
Yeah, that brings me, I want to take that. You answered my question. So now, Jan, I'll take this as a spectator now because sometimes I'm also not sure what happens. Now there's one thing that I found this weekend as well, not only with the South African teams, where two guys are contesting for the ball. They collide in the air. The one falls harder, he falls on his back, and the other guy falls on his feet. The guy that falls on his feet gets penalized. But they both went up for the ball. How are you going to manage that if both and they're in a position to get the ball?
Lofi, that's a difficult one. It's not an easy one. It's all about when the ball. We know the days when I refereed, there was no box kicks. The box kick started now with scrum halves, kick in the air, contesting. It's about a contest in the air. It's about a contest in the air, and your timing as the opponent must be brilliant. Otherwise, if you can't contest the ball, you sort of not on the same height as say for instance the kicker of the ball's player that's in the air. You've got to get away. Sorry, Meister, you've got to get away. I've got an excellent clip I normally show Kwagga Smith at Ellis Park when the Lions played Canterbury, everybody there, he got red carded there for being in the air. So unfortunately, that's a difficult one. But when I get to players or to get to coaches, I just tell them if the player must decide, I can't contest, I've got to get away. So that will leave him. The ball carrier catches the ball, he comes to ground, then you tackle. But if you're going to take the chance of being in the air with a tackler, with a ball carrier, you've got to be very, very careful not to touch him or to play him in the air.
Rick, I want to ask you, I mean, we've touched on the scrums and the aerial kick. It's a lot of people have now, and we spoke to Rassie last week, and he was quite vocal about this. There's this move, and we're having a meeting later this month in London where they're going to speak about the possible law changes for the World Cup next year. One of the things they want to bring back is the escort. When a guy kicks the ball, they want to bring back the escort. They're trying to eliminate, because I'm not sure if it's because South Africa is so good at it and we got such skillful players in the air. They're trying to protect the catcher like they used to. It's like I think Rassie used it as a glove. And I mean, that's legal or illegal obstruction. Why would you want to go back to that when there's a skill of contesting the ball in the air?
Yeah, that's also a very difficult one. That if you kick the ball in the air, who's going to catch the ball? You're going to be quite sure. Player A or player B? Who's going to catch the ball? And his players, are they protecting him from the opponents can't get to the ball carrier? That's something that the referees must decide. But I reckon that the players must be in an onside position. If they're in an onside position, I'm happy. But the moment my player goes offside in a sort of a standing position, he's preventing the opponents from getting to the ball carrier. Then we can talk about that. But if they're all onside, I mean, it's difficult to penalise them. But I agree. But I think the main issue there again is you watch the moment there's a box kick, there's players in front of the kicker. There's players in front of the kicker, and that's the biggest problem at the moment also.
It's almost not making decisions. And again, I want to emphasize, we're not attacking the referees. We are discussing events, incidents, and stuff. If a referee doesn't make a decision, if he doesn't penalise the skew feed at the scrum, if he doesn't penalise the player in front of the kicker, that's a non-decision that's causing the issue.
No, sure, I agree with that. I agree with that. But normally you don't penalise a player just for being in an offside position unless he plays the ball or the obstruction opponent. Punt. That's that's where we normally referee. If you obstruct the opponent and you play the ball, then you look at the penalty.
Yeah. And then obviously there's we're going to probably have many of these discussions in the weeks to come. If Freek wants to stay on. But the reality is that even if the lineouts, I mean, there's half the time, I'm not sure if throwing the ball to the scrum half was the idea, because you see the ball, people contesting and the ball still going skew and the referee just doesn't blow it. That's another contentious issue where I almost feel like the referees are too scared to make decisions.
I don't want to spoil their match now, but I know I'm telling you, you show me in the law book where a hooker throwing the ball can put his foot in the field of touch. It's law. It's a law. It's like scrum with a scrum feed. It's the law. It's right. It's writing. I spoke to Nas Botha the other day again. We had a huge discussion about this. But why is it written in the law? Put the ball in straight. Right. Let's get to the line out. The hooker, he can't put his foot. Yeah, he can put his foot on the touchline, but not in the field of play. Fine. It's very technical now. Number two, he can have a receiver. And now I'm telling you, you watch the game and the line out starts when the hooker throws in the ball. The moment he throws in the ball, the players peel off before the time, and they've got 2 receivers or 3 receivers, and making a huge difference when they get to the 5-yard penalty for that whole motion of them mauling, and the hooker normally scores the try. And also, it's the outside shoulder. We had a law change there, and they said, fine, if there's a ball being thrown in and the opponents don't compete, and it's a little bit skew, you play on. Brilliant. I'm happy with that. But if you don't compete, you let the opponents win the ball and you play. But as I've said, the line out also is a bone of contention because there's always sort of jumping across the line, over the line, and playing the play in the air, etc., etc. So also a situation that I've got to clean up.
Eugene, you must have a few issues, and I know we're going to speak, and I want to ask Freek if he's going to keep joining us. It will be fun having him here, maybe shorter and discuss specific incidents. But Eugene, there must be stuff that irks you in the game.
We've actually touched everything, and I agree 100%. a law is written, and then it must be executed. And it comes to the exactly what was said now. Freek said about the foot in the field, which is not ref anymore, and a scrum is putting the ball under the 8th man's feet. Which so where we're gonna say, okay, let's bend it a bit, let's stick to the law. Let's keep it simple. There's a lot of communication between players and coaches, refs on the field, which I think is too much. I think we must go to the basics. A captain speaks to the ref, and not every decision that he makes, because then it becomes like a soapy. Really, when there's critical things he needs to sort out or maybe communicate with the referee. Too many guys talking to the refs on the field.
Jan, just interesting. I want to throw something just for discussion, which I reckon at this stage is one of the difficult part is the question of foul play, the question of a rugby incident, and the question of collision, and there with yellow cards and red cards and bunker and all these things, that is a huge problem. And also the new law with the tackle below the shoulder, that's going to be a huge problem from a law point of view. But as I've said, they must distinguish between a rugby incident and foul play. And I'm talking about a rugby incident. I'm talking about the ball carrier running with the ball and the opponent's head just touches him, and then he gets yellow carded and then gets red carded. I think that's absurd. That's absolutely nonsense, because now we've got everybody coming onto the bandwagon again. It's the 2 assistant referees, it's the TMO, and then they run 50 meters to go to the big screen, and they have a huge discussion over there, and they go down the law. I reckon there's a huge problem. And I saw Saturday in the game, it was only a penalty. That's right, because that's a rugby incident. So surely it's about the referee's his judgment. It's so important. His judgment in terms of what's foul play and what is a incident of law infringement with foul play and a rugby incident.
I actually think that is a discussion on its own that we must have again with Freek, and we must combine that with player health.
I agree. Yeah, I was just about to say, Eugene, maybe we keep the bulk of that discussion for next week. So, I mean, I need to go do a bit of homework about exactly what the application is, and maybe speak to somebody that Freek can explain that to us exactly what it is. So we'll keep that one for next week. Freek, hopefully we can twist your rubber arm again, and you can come and join us again next week.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much, Freek, and I enjoyed your discussion and I enjoy your insights. And Eugene, thank you very much for your insights.
No, it's a pleasure, and lekker having Freek on the program with us. We can gain a lot of knowledge from him.
Thank you. Until next time, from myself, Jan de Koning. See you then.